Intratumoral vitamin C. What if that was cancer's kryptonite? Go back to the movies of Superman. What if Superman's kryptonite was cancer's vitamin C? Welcome to the Prescribed by Dr. Nathan Goodyear podcast. You know I love to talk about all things vitamin C because vitamin C, it is the flagship of integrative medicine, and really it's the flagship of integrative oncology. And we are at a precipice. We are a precipice of change where vitamin C, the research is really becoming so strong, really overwhelming to its benefit as a standalone therapy, as a precision therapy, but as a therapy in conjunction with conventional oncology therapeutics, such as surgery, chemo, radiation, immunotherapeutics, immune checkpoint inhibitors, targeted therapies. And we're at that reflection point in the research. The problem is doctors don't know it because doctors don't read. So that's what this podcast is for. I'm super excited to bring this new content of where I think we're going next with vitamin C. So when we look at vitamin C, great quote from an article, check it out in the references below. The quote, "The biological functions of vitamin C can be attributed to its biochemical property as an electron donor." See, when we think about vitamin C, most people think about it as a vitamin, and that word vitamin is two words connected together, vitamin, and these are way back in the 19th century where they thought that life was essentially made up of these amines, so these amines were vital to life, and that's where the word vitamin came from, and that's what vita in Latin means. It means vital. And so here they are vital for life. So vitamin C, yeah, we think about it, it is vital for life because vitamin C deficiency is going to lead to scurvy and it can take your life. But when we actually look at the foundational aspect of what vitamin C does is its ability to donate electrons. See, we think about vitamin C, pharmacological vitamin C. We don't think about vitamin C as a prodrug, that's hydrogen peroxide. We don't see it as a drug, but it really is. We don't see it as an electron donor because we don't think about the reduction oxidation process much. We don't think about dehydroascorbate, which is the oxidized form. We don't think about the reduced form, which is ascorbic acid. We just think about vitamin C. And so what we have here is the complexity of vitamin C that you're going to get from this podcast, from this video if you check us out on YouTube, but your doctor probably doesn't. And so sit back because you're going to get to know more than your doctor. So another famous quote from Linus Pauling. I love Linus Pauling. One of the two individuals that won the Nobel Prize in Medicine Physiology solo, individual. No others that were part of his team. It was him. Now, his original research, 1976, 1978, with vitamin C in terminal cancer patients was with Ewan Cameron, and Ewan Cameron was a he was a Scottish, big slip there. He was a Scottish surgeon. So it was Linus Pauling and Ewan Cameron. And what they did together was they looked at these terminal cancer patients, gave them 10 grams of IV vitamin C, and they did this in 1976, and then they reproduced it in 1978 and actually found greater value. But famous quote here from Linus Pauling said, "Although physicians, as a part of their training, are taught that the dosage of a drug that is prescribed for the patient must be very carefully determined and controlled, they seem to have difficulty in remembering that the same principle applies to vitamins." And so when we look at a lot of the natural, holistic, and integrative therapies, one of the things that concerns me is that the people designing these studies don't understand these pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic principles of these natural, holistic, and integrative therapies. They do in the conventional world because that's their lane. But what they do is then they take the research and they apply it to a lane that they have no business being in. And so you're seeing this in the mistletoe. And so we see this error be repeated time and time again. Thankfully, we've overcome the error with vitamin C. And I think we have now those that are pushing forward to make sure that same error doesn't occur in things like mistletoe. Now, we have to understand that the key to vitamin C is delivery. Delivery. delivering oral vitamin C is not the same as delivering IV vitamin C, which is not the same as delivering intratumoral vitamin C. Now, with Linus Pauling, New, and Cameron in 1976, 1978, they gave IV 10 grams vitamin C. Then there were a group of physicians at the Mayo Clinic that decided to reproduce that and only give oral vitamin C. And of course, they published that they found no statistical benefit in the cancer patients. And so then mainstream or legacy media took that up, and there was no counter, new digital media to counter the narrative that they set. And then so for the next basically 20, 30 years, vitamin C was thought to be non-effective because a group of doctors at the Mayo Clinic didn't understand the difference between oral and IV pharmacokinetics, what's called LABI, liberation, absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. It's going to be different between the oral and IV route. They missed it. So you can see why I'm concerned about the research. That dominated for 20, 30 years. We can't let that happen again. So when we look at oral vitamin C is really limited by what's called two-compartment pharmacokinetics. Now, what's that mean? It's a pharmacological principle that as it relates to oral vitamin C, we're probably not going to achieve more than 70 to 80 micromolar of vitamin C in the plasma. And it's this two-compartment pharmacokinetics that keeps that there. That's that kind of set point. And the way it does that is when you're taking vitamin C in by mouth, as it travels down through the gastrointestinal tract, and your plasma vitamin C is less than 70 micromolar, then it's going to upregulate the GI absorption of that vitamin C. Absorption, that's the second component of that acronym LABMI. And then what it's going to do is it's going to also reduce the renal excretion of the vitamin C, so it's going to increase the plasma ascorbic acid level. But if that plasma ascorbic acid level is, say, above 70 micromolar or very close to it, you're going to see a decrease in the GI absorption and an increase in the renal excretion to maintain that very steady course. Now, this is why oral vitamin C is never going to achieve a therapeutic direct cytotoxic effect against cancer. It never will if given orally because of that two-compartment pharmacokinetics. Now, people will say, yes, you can, but basic pharmacokinetics of vitamin C says, no, you cannot. And two-compartment pharmacokinetics puts the exclamation point on that, no, you cannot. And so there's actually been some research done that actually looked at the different plasma ascorbic acid between the oral and IV route. And you look in the show notes, you'll be able to see that there. Let's see, do I have the reference right here in front of me? I don't, but it will be in the show notes, so definitely check that out. So by looking at the oral vitamin C, there was this study, direct comparison. They looked at oral doses of 0.03 grams per day, 0.1 grams per day, 2 grams per day, 0.4 grams per day. And they looked at maximum tolerated dose of 18 grams per day, which was at 3 grams every 4 hours. Now, what they found is that the plasma concentration in micromolar at 0.4 grams at an individual dose only achieved 70 micromolar plus or minus 4.4. That's it. That's it. So there's that 70 to 80 micromolar. Now, when you look at the IV dose, okay, and if we look at this from really two perspectives, one is a gram per kilogram dose and a total dose. So if we looked at 0.1 gram per kilogram of IV vitamin C, it achieved 2.4 millimolar, not micromolar, but millimolar. So significantly higher plasma concentration. At 1.5 grams per kilogram, which many, including myself, believe this to be the high dose value, it achieves 26.2 plus or minus 4.9, or right around 30 millimolar. Now, why is this important? Research shows if you want a direct cytotoxic effect against cancer, you need to achieve a plasma millimolar range of 20 to 40 millimolar. But the foundation, the bare basement level is 1 millimolar versus 70 to 80 micromolar with the oral dose. It's not achievable by the oral route. Now, you can modify the gut microbiome. You can create epigenetic issues or epigenetic benefits. So there is some benefit there, but I would tell you that there's some research that says be very careful with that, because in cancer, that suboptimal vitamin C dosing there on a massive scale could actually favor the cancer. But then when we look at the vitamin C dosing at 60 grams per week, the millimolar dose is 21 plus or minus 5. So significant therapeutic value when it's IV, but not oral, and it's because of that two-compartment pharmacokinetics. Another point to recognize, so that's talking about oral versus IV, okay? So if we're talking about direct cytotoxic, cancer-killing effects, it's vitamin C. Now, vitamin C can have other effects, immunomodulatory effects, anti-angiogenic. You can use it with other conventional therapeutics. But we have to recognize that when we're using vitamin C from the IV route, we can't just treat everybody alike. You recognize this with a 5'2", 120-pound patient sitting next to a 6'6", 366-pound patient. Intuitively, people go, why are we both receiving 50 grams? That person is as big as my thigh. That is the 5'2" talking, the 6'6", 366-pound talking about 5'2". Intuitively, they recognize that their size dictates a different response. And you see this in conventional pharmaceuticals. You see this. Bigger people are typically going to need a higher dose. And you see this in IV dosing of pharmaceuticals as well. But when we look at vitamin C in the IV route, we have to recognize that beyond the weight, the size of the individual, there's things like tumor burden. How much burden is present? Is it just one tumor that's 2 to 3 centimeters, or are there multiple tumors all over the body? What's the vitamin C deficit of the individual? When you look at cancer and vitamin C, it's really kind of a metabolic scurvy situation. Many of the cancer patients that I see, they're massively deficient in vitamin C. So you give them any vitamin C, the body is going to use what it needs to. And so it's going to require you to dose higher if there's a massive vitamin C deficiency. Understand cancer would also be considered a vitamin D deficient state. So it would also be a rickets, metabolic rickets, if you will. The metabolic demand delivery. So the metabolic requirements of the body, guess what? We need lots of vitamin C because we as humans don't make it. We lack the enzyme glutolactose oxidase to make it. The redox balance, the reduction oxidation balance. Remember, vitamin C is an electron donor. And whatever that redox balance is, the vitamin C may or may not need to be dosed higher. And then what's the level of the inflammation? So if this is a cancer situation where there's massive inflammation ongoing, it's out of control, or patients receiving a pro-oxidative therapy like chemo, radiation, or even a natural therapy like low-dose metronomic chemo, and yes, vitamin C can be pro-oxidative. You don't want to overwhelm the oxidative stress situation because that will aggravate the inflammation. So in that presence, if there's a lot of inflammation, the vitamin C dosing may need to be elevated to counter the inflammation response that vitamin C would counter. But also understand the therapeutics involved could also require a different dosing of vitamin C. And that could be up or that could be down. Because if there's overwhelming oxidative stress that has been detected in the body, and you can see that in, say, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, sedimentation rate, you might want to tone back the pro-oxidative vitamin C dosing. But if you don't see that and the patient has a coexisting oxidative therapy like radiation, you could add pro-oxidative vitamin C with that to match the tumor burden, the vitamin C deficit, the weight, the metabolic demand, and the redox and inflammation. So when we look at the oral and the two-compartment pharmacokinetics, we have to understand there it's primarily serving as an antioxidant. It's improving the gut microbiome balance, particularly with bifidobacteria, and it's an epigenetic modifier. But when we look at the IV routes, we're obviously getting increased systemic delivery, and we're getting pro-oxidative effect, immunomodulatory effects, and we're getting these pharmacokinetic benefits by bypassing the gut and going right into the IV. And by doing so, we get into the plasma where the ascorbic acid is. Now recognize that what needs to happen in the plasma when we deliver vitamin C is it must reach the site of action. It must reach the tumor, but it doesn't just go from the blood to the tumor. It goes from the blood into the extracellular space, from the extracellular space, then into the tumor microenvironment, and then it reaches into the tumor and it saturates the tumor, and it has to happen this wherever the tumors are. So we have to recognize that what happens is the plasma ascorbic acid that we give IV, it is actually converted to ascorbate free radical and then eventually converted to hydrogen peroxide. And research, actually a beautiful study published in 2007 entitled Ascorbate in Pharmacological Concentrations Selectively Generates Ascorbate Radical and Hydrogen Peroxide in the Extracellular Fluid in Vivo. In vivo. Not human clinical trials, but in vivo, so animal models here. And what they found is that the preferential formation of the ascorbate radical and hydrogen peroxide in the extracellular space did occur because it didn't happen in the blood because of the red blood cells and their detoxification enzymes not allowing that to happen. And so what was then happening is in the extracellular space, this gradient was allowing the production of these oxidative free radicals that then could generate eventually the hydrogen peroxide that then could generate the hydroxyl free radicals and the superoxide anions that could then lead to the pro-oxidative state in the tumor microenvironment and in the tumor, hopefully saturating all aspects of the tumor, the normoxic, the normal oxygen, and then the hypoxic, which is a low oxygen state. But this wasn't happening in the blood, and it was because in the blood, the red blood cell catalase and glutathione peroxidase was actually breaking down this production of the prodrug, which is hydrogen peroxide. But when IV, when we give it in proper dosage and account for those variables, tumor burden, weight, redox, inflammation, and we then dose appropriately, monitoring the plasma ascorbic acid levels, not the capillary glucose, but monitoring the plasma ascorbic acid levels, we can then reach the extracellular space, reach the tumor microenvironment, and reach the tumor. Now, we have no ability to test clinically in those spaces of extracellular space, tumor microenvironment, or tumor, but we do in the plasma, and we can extrapolate that out. But let's talk about where I think the future is going with vitamin C, and that's intratumoral. See, intratumoral vitamin C is tumoricidal, kills cancer cells. It's an immunomodulatory agent, and it's synergistic with chemotherapy. So it's tumoricidal, it's an immune modulating agent, and it's synergistic with chemotherapy. So I want to go through some background on this, just a few studies, and I want to talk about a recent study that really, I think, created some exciting future for intratumoral vitamin C. The first article is from 2012, and we're going to go back just a little bit, but effect of high-dose intravenous ascorbic acid on the growth of marine sarcoma in vivo. Now, the purpose here was to investigate the effects of high-dose ascorbic acid, vitamin C here, was done in both IV and intratumorally, okay, because they wanted to study the effects. And they were looking at mice that were implanted with sarcoma cancer cells. And these were to create tumor models within these mice. That's what a marine model is. It's taking advantage of the similarities between the mice and humans and using these mice as a means for analysis without, doing it in humans. And so what they did is they monitored tumor growth over the time to assess the impact of the different delivery techniques of the ascorbic acid. And here were the key findings here. They found high concentrations of ascorbic acid induced cytotoxic effects on the tumor cells. Translated, slowed the tumor growth. The intratumoral administration resulted in